would you please trade places with Mr. Matthews?
All right. I'm a hyperactive, underachieving, 11-year-old boy.
I meant physically.
Oh, well, that takes less of a psychic toll.
From actors fired for being too short to characters mysteriously vanishing into the other part of the school, Boy Meets World hid some truly bizarre secrets behind its wholesome facade. The beloved TGIF sitcom wasn't just about life lessons. It featured stolen jackets, 3 different actresses playing the same character, and a slasher episode so scary it almost didn't air. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Boy Meets World. Fact 1. Will Friedle almost lost Eric Matthews' role because of height.
Weighs 10,000 words. Word number 1. I want my mommy.
When Boy Meets World was gearing up for production in 1993, Will Friedle wasn't supposed to be Eric Matthews at all. Friedle had auditioned for the role of Corey's older brother, but on the day he was scheduled to come back for callbacks, he got sick and couldn't make it to the studio. The producers couldn't wait around, so they moved forward with another actor who filmed the entire pilot episode as Eric. Everything seemed set until the producers watched the footage and realized they had a major problem. The actor they'd chosen was shorter than Ben Savage, who played Corey, and it looked completely wrong on screen to have the younger brother towering over his older sibling. It just didn't work visually, and they knew audiences would notice the height difference immediately. By the time Friedle recovered from his illness, the producers had already decided to recast the role. They brought him back in, and this time his height worked in his favor since he was noticeably taller than Savage. Friedle got the part, and the original Eric was out. The show reshot all of Eric's scenes from the pilot, with Friedle in the role, and the rest became television history. It's strange to think that if Friedle hadn't gotten sick that day, or if the first actor had been just a few inches taller, one of the most beloved characters on Boy Meets World might have been played by someone completely different. The height issue that seemed like a problem at first ended up being exactly what got Friedle the role that would define his career for 7 seasons. Fact 2. 3 different actresses played Topanga. Before Danielle Fishel,
Topanga! Topanga, my honey. May I call you honey?
No.
the role of Topanga Lawrence went through an unusually brutal casting process before Danielle Fishel finally landed the part that would make her famous. When the show first started production, a young actress named Bonnie Morgan was actually the first person cast as Topanga. Morgan showed up on set, excited to be part of the new ABC sitcom, and filmed scenes for an entire day. But at the end of that first day, she was suddenly fired, and the reason given was shockingly blunt. The producers told her she wasn't pretty enough for the role, which is a devastating thing to hear at any age, especially as a child actor just starting out. After Morgan was let go, the producers brought in Marla Sokoloff, who would later become famous for her role on The Practice, to take over as Topanga. Sokoloff filmed her scenes and seemed like she might be the final choice, but the producers still weren't satisfied with what they were seeing. Finally, they brought in Danielle Fishel for an audition, and this time, everything clicked. Fishel had the right look, the right energy, and the right chemistry with the rest of the cast, particularly with Ben Savage, who played Corey. She was officially cast as Topanga and kept the role for all 7 seasons of the show. It's hard to imagine anyone else playing the character now, but Fishel came dangerously close to never getting the opportunity. The fact that 2 other actresses were hired and then replaced before Fishel even auditioned shows just how uncertain the producers were about who should play one of the show's most important characters. Fact 3. Topanga was named during a traffic jam.
This world of yours seems like quite a peaceful and loving place.
Yes, especially since we moved all men underground and used them just for breeding.
The name Topanga Lawrence is so distinctive and memorable that it's hard to imagine the character being called anything else. but the truth is that the name almost didn't exist at all. Creator Michael Jacobs has told the story multiple times about how he came up with the name in one of the strangest ways possible. Jacobs was stuck in Los Angeles traffic one day, crawling along the freeway at a painfully slow pace when his phone rang. It was someone from the production team calling to ask what they should name the quirky, free-spirited girl character they were adding to the show. Jacobs looked around for inspiration and noticed a freeway sign for Topanga Canyon, one of the well-known areas in the Santa Monica Mountains. He blurted out the name Topanga without thinking too much about it, and the person on the other end of the phone loved it immediately. The name stuck, and that was that. But here's the really weird part. Jacobs has admitted that if he'd been stuck in a different part of Los Angeles traffic that day, the character might have ended up being named Canoga after Canoga Park, another neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley. Imagine an entire generation of fans growing up with Cory and Canoga instead of Cory and Topanga. It just doesn't have the same ring to it. The fact that one of television's most iconic character names came from a random traffic jam and a freeway sign shows just how much luck and timing play into creating a successful show. Fact 4. The final classroom scene was only filmed once.
It can be that easy. You walk in here, turn in your paper, and all is forgotten.
The series finale of Boy Meets World ends with one of the most emotional scenes in sitcom history, where Cory, Topanga, Sean, and Eric say goodbye to Mr. Feeney in his classroom one last time. What most fans don't know is that this scene was only filmed once because the cast was too emotionally devastated to do multiple takes. By the time they reached the final day of shooting, everyone on set knew they were saying goodbye, not just to their characters, but to 7 years of working together as a family. When the cameras started rolling for that last classroom scene, the emotions were completely real. Danielle Fishel has talked about how she couldn't stop crying during the take, and those weren't acting tears. She was genuinely heartbroken that the show was ending and that this chapter of her life was closing. The directors and producers realized pretty quickly that they weren't going to get a better take than the first one because everyone was too emotional to reset and do it again. William Daniels, who played Mr. Feeney, was also struggling to keep his composure as he delivered his final lines to the cast he'd watched grow up over 7 seasons. The decision was made to keep that first take as the final version that aired, which means the tears, the shaky voices, and the raw emotion viewers saw were completely authentic. There was no second take to fall back on, no safety net if someone messed up a line. It was one shot, one moment, and it had to be perfect. And somehow, it was. Fact 5. Ryder Strong stole. Sean's iconic jacket and lost it.
Street. You know, maybe no matter what I do, this is where I end up, like that poem says.
Ryder Strong became so attached to Sean Hunter's brown leather jacket during the show's run that he decided to take it home without asking for permission first. Strong has admitted in interviews that he essentially stole the jacket from the Boy Meets World wardrobe department because he loved it so much and wanted to keep wearing it even when he wasn't filming. He took the jacket with him on a trip to New York City, thinking he'd just wear it around for a while and then quietly return it to the set before anyone noticed it was missing. But things didn't go according to plan. While Strong was in New York, someone broke into his car and stole a bunch of his belongings, including the iconic brown leather jacket that had become synonymous with Sean Hunter's character. Strong panicked because he knew the jacket was Disney property and that he'd taken it without authorization. He couldn't just go back to the wardrobe department and admit what he'd done because he'd probably get in serious trouble, or at the very least have to pay to replace it. So instead, Strong went out and bought a replacement jacket that looked as close to the original as possible, then sneaked it back into the wardrobe rotation and hoped nobody would notice the switch. Apparently, no one ever did, or if they did notice, they never said anything to Strong about it. For the rest of the show's run, Sean Hunter was actually wearing a replacement jacket that Ryder Strong had purchased himself to cover up the theft of the original. Fact 6. Minkus disappeared. Because of Steve Urkel's
Another A for Mr. Minkus. No, make that an A plus for Mr. Minkus.
Stuart Minkus was a recurring character throughout Boy Meets World's first season, serving as the nerdy know-it-all who constantly competed with Corey in class. But when Season 2 started, Minkus had completely vanished from the show with no explanation whatsoever. Fans noticed the disappearance immediately and wondered what had happened to the character, but the real reason behind Minkus's exit had nothing to do with the actor's performance or the character not working. It was actually because of Steve Urkel, the suspender-wearing nerd from Family Matters, another show that aired on ABC's TGIF lineup. The network executives and producers became concerned that having two prominent nerdy characters on ABC at the same time was redundant and might confuse audiences or split attention between the shows. Family Matters was already a massive hit, and Jaleel White's portrayal of Steve Urkel had become a cultural phenomenon, so the Boy Meets World producers felt pressure to differentiate their show. The decision was made to drop Minkus entirely rather than risk being seen as copying the formula that was working so well for Family Matters. Lee Norris, who played Minkus, was essentially a casualty of network politics and the fear of having too much overlap between shows. The character wouldn't return to Boy Meets World until the series finale, where he made a brief appearance and joked about being in the other part of the school all those years, which became one of the show's most famous meta moments. Fact 7. Morgan disappeared. For 13 episodes after The Longest Time Out,
I would love another cup of tea, thank you. And would you like to try on my new floppy hat?
Morgan Matthews, Corey's younger sister, had a bizarre disappearance in the middle of Boy Meets World's third season that became one of the strangest aspects of the show's history. Lily Nixay, who played Morgan for the first 2 seasons and part of Season 3, was only 6 years old when she decided she didn't want to be on the show anymore. Being a child actor meant long hours on set, memorizing lines, and missing out on normal kid activities, and Nixay apparently decided she'd had enough. Rather than force a 6-year-old to continue working when she didn't want to, the producers wrote Morgan out of the show temporarily. The character simply vanished for 13 consecutive episodes with no explanation given on screen. Corey's family just continued on as if Morgan had never existed, which was jarring for viewers who had gotten used to seeing her in family scenes. When the producers decided to bring Morgan back, they recast the role with Lindsay Ridgway, who was slightly older and more committed to staying with the show long-term. Ridgway's first appearance as Morgan included a joke that acknowledged the weirdness of the situation. She walked down the stairs and said she'd been upstairs in the longest time out ever, which was the show's way of winking at the audience and admitting that yes, Morgan had been missing, and yes, she now looked completely different. It was a meta moment that became one of the show's most memorable lines, even though it was essentially covering up the fact that the original actress had quit. Fact 8. The cast thought Mr. Feeney was British.
I'm going to try to put this as kindly as possible. The show has turned into a circus, and you 3 are driving the tiny car.
William Daniels' performance as Mr. Feeney was so convincing with his refined, proper way of speaking that the young cast members genuinely believed he was British for a significant portion of the show's early years. Ben Savage, Danielle Fishel, and Ryder Strong have all mentioned in interviews that they assumed Daniels was from England because of his incredibly precise diction and his New England accent, which sounded foreign to their young California ears. The kids on set would talk about Mr. Daniels being British when he wasn't around, completely convinced they were working with an English actor who was just really good at doing an American accent when necessary. The truth is that William Daniels was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, about as far from British as you can get. But when Daniels was 15 years old, he took a role in a play that required him to adopt a New England dialect, and he liked the way it sounded so much that he just kept speaking that way for the rest of his life. It became his natural speaking voice, to the point where even his own family got used to him sounding that way. When the Boy Meets World cast eventually found out that Daniels wasn't actually British, they were shocked and slightly embarrassed that they'd been fooled for so long. Daniels thought it was hilarious that these kids had been working with him every day and never questioned their assumption about his background. It just goes to show how committed Daniels was to his refined way of speaking and how convincing his accent really was. Fact 9. The slasher episode almost got banned for being too scary.
Oh, that's it.
All I wanted was a pencil.
Oh, shut up, Kenny.
Boy Meets World was known for being a wholesome family sitcom, so when the show decided to do a full-blown horror parody episode in Season 5, ABC executives got extremely nervous about whether it was appropriate. The episode, titled "And Then There Was Sean," was a direct homage to slasher films like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, complete with a masked killer hunting down the main characters in a dark, empty school. Director Jeff McCracken wanted to shoot the episode like an actual horror movie rather than a typical sitcom, which meant using different camera angles, dramatic lighting, and building real suspense throughout. When the network executives saw early footage of what McCracken was filming, they became concerned that the episode was too scary for Boy Meets World's family-friendly audience. There were serious discussions about whether the episode should be heavily edited or possibly not aired at all. The executives worried that younger viewers would be frightened by the slasher movie elements and that parents would complain about the show being too dark. McCracken had to defend his vision and convince the network that the episode worked precisely because it was so different from the show's normal tone. He argued that the audience was smart enough to understand it was a parody and that the scary elements were intentionally over the top. Eventually, the network agreed to let the episode air with minimal changes, and it became one of the most beloved and talked about episodes in the entire series. Fans loved seeing Boy Meets World take such a big creative risk, and Then There Was Sean proved that sitcoms could temporarily step outside their comfort zones and try something completely different. Fact 10. Anthony Tyler Quinn auditioned for Alan Matthews, not Mr. Turner.
It's no big deal. It's a girl I dated a long time ago, and it's over. And don't you dare start the next sentence with men.
Anthony. Tyler Quinn's journey to becoming Mr. Turner on Boy Meets World took a strange and unexpected path that started with him auditioning for a completely different role. When the show was first casting, Quinn came in to read for the part of Alan Matthews, Corey's father, which eventually went to William Russ. Quinn did well in his audition, and the producers liked him. But there was one major problem. He was way too young to convincingly play the father of a teenager. Alan Matthews needed to be someone who looked like he could have a 13-year-old son, and Quinn just didn't fit that description yet. The producers told Quinn he wasn't right for the role of Alan, but they were impressed enough with his audition that they kept him in mind for future opportunities. About a year later, when Boy Meets World was heading into its second season, the writers created the character of Jonathan Turner, a young, cool English teacher who would serve as a mentor to Sean Hunter. The producers immediately thought of Quinn and brought him back in to audition for Mr. Turner. This time, his age worked perfectly for the role, since Mr. Turner was supposed to be a younger teacher who could relate to the students in a way that Mr. Feeney couldn't. Quinn landed the part and became a fan-favorite character for the next few seasons. It's interesting to think about how different the show would have been if Quinn had been cast as Alan Matthews, or if the producers hadn't remembered him when the Mr. Turner role came along. The character of Mr. Turner might have gone to someone else entirely, and Quinn's career could have taken a completely different direction. Fact 11. Disney held Mr. Turner's actor hostage.
I'm new at this. I'm just making this up as I go along. You didn't come with instructions there, Sean.
After firing him, Anthony Tyler, Quinn's exit from Boy Meets World was supposed to be a simple storyline where his character, Mr. Turner, had a motorcycle accident and left the show. But what happened behind the scenes after Quinn was written out was far more complicated and frustrating than anyone expected. After Mr. Turner's final episode aired, Quinn naturally assumed he was free to move on and start auditioning for other roles. He just spent several years on a successful network sitcom, so he figured he'd have plenty of opportunities waiting for him. But Disney had other plans. Even though they decided to write Quinn off the show and no longer needed him for Boy Meets World, Disney refused to release him from his contract. This meant that Quinn was legally bound to Disney and couldn't audition for other shows or take on new acting work, even though Disney had no intention of using him for anything. Quinn has described this period as being held hostage by the company, stuck in a contractual limbo where he couldn't work but also couldn't leave. This situation dragged on for 9 months, during which Quinn watched potential opportunities pass him by because he wasn't allowed to pursue them. By the time Disney finally released him from his contract, nearly a year had gone by, and the momentum he'd built from being on Boy Meets World had largely disappeared. Quinn has spoken about how frustrating and unfair the experience was, and how it felt like Disney was punishing him even though he hadn't done anything wrong. The entire situation left a bitter taste in his mouth about how the industry treats actors once they're no longer useful to a production. Fact 12. Will Friedle and Ryder Strong couldn't film scenes together.
You treat us like equals, like adults.
One of the strangest behind-the-scenes facts about Boy Meets World is that Will Friedle and Ryder Strong, who played brothers Eric and Sean, were deliberately kept apart during filming as much as possible. The two actors became extremely close friends in real life, which sounds like it would be great for the show, but it actually created a major problem on set. Whenever Friedle and Strong were in scenes together, they would constantly make each other laugh, crack jokes, and ruin takes because they couldn't keep it together long enough to deliver their lines seriously. The directors and producers quickly realized that having these two in the same scene was going to drag out filming and waste valuable production time. So they made a decision that seems almost unbelievable. They would avoid writing scenes that featured both Eric and Sean together. If you go back and watch Boy Meets World with this in mind, you'll notice that Eric and Sean are almost never in scenes together, which is bizarre considering Eric is Corey's older brother and Sean is Corey's best friend. You'd expect them to interact all the time, but they rarely do. According to various cast interviews, Friedle and Strong only appeared in about 5 scenes together over the course of the show's entire 7-season run. That's an incredibly small number for two main characters who theoretically should have been around each other constantly. The fact that the producers had to essentially separate these two actors because they were too friendly and had too much fun together is both hilarious and kind of sad, since it meant viewers missed out on what could have been some great comedic moments between Eric and Sean. Fact 13. Danielle Fishel and Ryder Strong had weddings on the same day.
Easy about it.
Because she knows what you know, Topanga. A girl can do no better than Corey Matthews.
In a bizarre coincidence that forced their Boy Meets World co-stars to make an impossible choice, Danielle Fishel and Ryder Strong both scheduled their real-life weddings for the exact same day. Neither of them had coordinated with the other or even realized the conflict until it was too late to change the plans. Fishel was getting married in Los Angeles, while Strong's wedding was taking place in a completely different location, making it physically impossible for anyone to attend both ceremonies. This put their former castmates in an extremely awkward position, since they were close with both Fishel and Strong and wanted to celebrate with both of them on their big days. But they had to choose which wedding to attend, knowing that whichever one they picked, they'd be missing the other. Some cast members chose to go to Fishel's wedding, while others decided to attend Strong's ceremony instead. There was no animosity or hard feelings about the split, but it was a strange situation that highlighted just how difficult it can be to coordinate schedules when everyone involved has busy lives and careers. Both Fischel and Strong have laughed about the coincidence in interviews since then, acknowledging how weird it was that after years of working together on the same show, they managed to pick the same day to get married without consulting each other first. It's the kind of scheduling conflict that sounds like it could be a plot line from a sitcom itself, except it actually happened in real life to two people who spent 7 years playing love interests on television. Fact 14. Ryder Strong was the first and only actor to audition for Sean.
Okay, I get your point.
No, I don't think you do.
Fine, then I'll just get out of your way. I thought you were cooler.
When casting began for Boy Meets World, most roles went through the typical audition processes where dozens of actors would read for the same part, and producers would spend weeks deciding who was the best fit. But Sean Hunter's casting happened in the most unusual way possible. Ryder Strong walked into his audition as the very first actor to read for the role, and creator Michael Jacobs immediately knew he'd found his Sean. Jacobs has said in interviews that within the first few lines of Strong's audition, he turned to the other producers in the room and essentially said that the search was over. Strong had exactly the right combination of vulnerability, charm, and edge that the character needed, and Jacobs couldn't imagine anyone else playing the role. So they did something almost unheard of in television casting. They stopped the audition process entirely and refused to see any other actors for Sean Hunter. This meant that all the other young actors who were scheduled to audition later that day or in the following weeks never even got a chance to read for the role because Strong had already locked it down. It's an incredibly rare occurrence in Hollywood, where casting directors and producers almost always want to see multiple options before making a final decision. But Jacobs was so confident in Strong's audition that he was willing to commit immediately without seeing what anyone else might bring to the character. That level of certainty turned out to be completely justified, as Strong's portrayal of Sean became one of the most beloved aspects of the entire show and helped define what Boy Meets World would become over its 7-season run. Fact 15. Creator's son played baby Joshua in the finale.
Come here, I want to tell you something. You know what's out there?
Throughout Boy Meets World's 6th season, baby Joshua Matthews was played by various different babies depending on which child actor was available for filming on any given day. This is common practice for shows that feature infant characters, since babies can only work for limited hours and their moods are unpredictable, so productions typically have multiple children on standby who can play the same role. But when it came time to film the series finale, creator Michael Jacobs ran into an unexpected problem with whichever baby actor was scheduled to play Joshua that day. The child wouldn't stop talking or making noise during takes, which was ruining the emotional tone of the final scenes. With time running out and the pressure mounting to finish filming the last episode of the series, Jacobs made a split-second decision. He called his wife and asked her to bring their own son, Daniel Jacobs, to the studio immediately. Daniel was roughly the same age as the character of Joshua, so he could easily pass as the Matthews family's youngest child. When Daniel arrived on set, he was quickly dressed in Joshua's costume and placed into the scenes that still needed to be filmed. Unlike the other child actor, Daniel was calm and quiet, allowing the cast to finish the emotional finale without any more disruptions. So if you go back and watch the Boy Meets World series finale, you're actually looking at the creator's real son playing baby Joshua in those final moments. It's a strange piece of trivia that most fans have no idea about, since there's no way to tell just by watching that the baby in the finale is different from the babies who played Joshua in earlier episodes.